there's a lot of commonalities in this room, and for me probably the most important one is that we're all teachers. I still teach. I teach third year for about 2 weeks a year when I can fit it in. And I've asked for some first year lectures because they're the hardest ones to give, but the ones that are also the most fun, and actually the ones where you have the greatest impact. Your teacher, like me, you know that your impact lies in the students that you taught and in what it is that they go on to do. And one of the great pleasures of my life, it is still the case, because I've always taught big first year classes, that I'm forever bumping into people that tell me that I taught them. It's wonderful. I think there's another very important unifying theme in this room, and that is that we are all part of the South Australian education system. I spoke about this briefly earlier this week, I'll speak about it briefly today. I think the time has come for us to put aside the differences in our education system, to put the student's needs, the community needs at the forefront of what it is we're doing, and to recognise that historically what we've done in carving ourselves up into balkanised areas, primary school, then high school somehow different from university somehow different from TAFE, doesn't necessarily make any sense at all in a world where lifelong learning is going to be critically important. If I go to America, they won't talk about K to 12, they'll talk about K to 20 or K to 21, because that's how they see their education system, a seamless, integrated system that provides for people of that at that time. I actually think it's almost time we started talking about K to death, because in fact, from the moment you start education in the modern world, I think you will need to continue to upgrade your skills right the way through the rest of your lives. I look forward to finding those points of intersection that can help us to make our system more supportive of student need. Now, I'm actually a product of that South Australian education system. I was a Hawthorndine kindy boy. I went to Belair Infant School in the days when there were infant schools. I went to Belair Primary, I went to Blackwood High, and then to Adelaide University. I don't actually have very happy memories of school. I think I must have been bored. I was certainly known for not behaving terribly well. I remember about 4 years out, I won a Rhodes Scholarship, and one of the school council members said to the then principal, a guy called Brian Watchow, if any of you knew him, what do you make of the fact that a Blackwood High School guy's got the Rhodes Scholarship? And he turned around and he said, he was never anything but trouble when he was here. But whatever happened at school, it clearly prepared me well for life. I was able to do all right at university, and then I had that strange moment that all young Australians have when they get out into the international sphere. I was at Oxford University, assumed that I would not be as good as those I was working with, who were the best of the British system and the best of the American system, and found to my great surprise that Australians are just as good as everyone else in the world, and that the Australian education system prepares people just as well as the education systems in the world. We have a lot to be grateful for with our education system, with all of the challenges that we confront. Now, I didn't come here today to talk to you about me, nor to talk about the past. I do want to talk about the future, but not particularly about the prospect of merger. We'll touch on that just a little bit towards the end. I want to talk to you a little bit about how we see the future of the university and what it has to do, and the kind of impact that we think that is going to have on the education that we offer, because in effect, that's our major point of intersection. People look at us at the university and what they see is the past. They see wonderful old buildings, they see even old professors. Yet, of course, the university, all universities, are about the future. It's our young people that will go out and lead us into the socio-economic context that will be tomorrow. It's the products of our research and innovation that will probably underpin economic advance for the state of South Australia. So it's important for us to think about what we're doing in the context of what the future might hold. And that, of course, is where it gets really difficult, because we're at one of those moments in human history when it's not easy to work out what the future does hold. We are no better than anyone else at knowing what the jobs might be in 20 years' time. We don't. We don't know what the industries are going to be. We don't know what the nature of work is going to be. But like you, we have a responsibility to position our young people for whatever that future might hold. We probably have a slightly greater responsibility, because there are so many fewer universities, to also help to position South Australia for where it needs to be in that future 10, 20 or 30 years hence. Now, we don't know what jobs to train people for. We're open about it. But we do think we know what must be the resources that a community will need to embark on the journey of the next 20 years. We think that successful societies will have some combination of innovation on the one hand, new knowledge, new ways of using knowledge, the source of entrepreneurship, the source of new industries. We think that all prosperous societies will need a greater and greater investment in human capital, young people who are educated to high levels who can participate in the economic future of tomorrow. And we think that all successful communities over the next few decades will also be marked out by very tight global connectivity. Almost all the knowledge in the world is not in South Australia, it's somewhere else. And we need conduits that can bring people and knowledge to us so that we can avail ourselves of the benefits of that. We think that a combination of innovation, human capital and global connectivity is the right way to prepare South Australia and South Australian kids for the future. And of course, it's more or less what universities have always done. The challenge, though, is that we're going to have to do it at scale and at a time when it's needed more than it's ever been. That, for us, challenges us not to just do what we've always done, but to find a way to align that with community need and aspiration that we haven't previously sought. We have to produce students that are trained for the future that they will confront. We have to find ways to create the industries that South Australia will need. We have to move from a history of being a commentator on society to being a participant in the future of South Australia and South Australian lives. We sit on a remarkable repository of knowledge and wisdom and information, yet we're going to have to find the right ways to make that knowledge far more available to those who can benefit from it and far more translatable into socio-economic benefit for the future of what we're doing. It's the interface between the university and the rest of South Australia that we are going to have to, with some trepidation, explore. Now that's the basis for the thinking that we're doing around education. Recognising that whatever our students see in 20 years' time, it's most unlikely to look like whatever they're seeing at the moment, and most unlikely to actually bear much resemblance to what we're seeing at the moment. That there are all sorts of disruption, contested ideas, technology that's changing everything, social and political and economic upheaval, environmental challenges, they're all going to play some part in shaping the next period of time. People tell us that the machines are going to come and take 20% of jobs or 50% of jobs. And I can tell you what, we're very strong in machine learning at the University of Adelaide. We probably rank in the top 10 in the world for that. And we happen to think that too. The computers are more competent than people think. So what does that mean for young people who are trying to prepare themselves for their future, who are trying to think about what it is they need to do that fits them to carve out their own life? How do they interrogate what their place might be in a future that none of us can really predict? And how do we know what education we should give them when we don't know any better than them what it is that's coming? Well, one of the things we know is that the model that says that you start university education at 17 years of age, spend 3 full-time years in university and then go out and never come back into university again or into education again, is no longer fit for purpose. That the demands of the future workforce will require something different. I was at King's College for 5 weeks last year doing some study leave, and they told me that they no longer talk about careers, that in Britain young people no longer believe that there is such a thing as a career. There is nothing that they think will position them for 40 years in the same job in the workforce. They talk about jobs, they talk about work, but they no longer talk about careers. Yet, of course, we're largely set up to prepare people for careers. We were set up about 145 years ago. At that stage, we invented or copied the 3-year, 4-year bachelor's program. 145 years later, we still teach the 3-year or the 4-year bachelor program. It's the dominant mode of university education in Australia. In fact, it's pretty much the only form of university education in Australia, and the reason for that is the government insists that that's the only kind of education that it will fund. We don't have the opportunity to explore more widely. Yet that complete sclerosis when it comes to the education we offer has been accompanied by an enormous change in terms of what the students need from us. You can start with the fact that there's almost an infinite amount of information now compared to the amount of information that was in the world 145 years ago. It's not clear why the same degree structure would still serve us well. But you can go on to something which is even more profound. Universities have been around for 1,000 years. Remarkable. Only us and the organised church, I think, go back that far. And for almost all of that 1,000 years, we've taught about 0.4% of the population, brilliantly prepared, usually with some kind of elite schooling, and coming in to be the leaders of tomorrow. In Australia now, we teach about 40% of the school leavers. That's 100 times more than we used to teach in 1950. Those people surely come to us with a range of different preparations, with a range of different aspirations. It's very hard to think why those people would benefit from exactly the same education as that which was designed for 0.4% of people. They're going to be leaders, but perhaps different kinds of leaders. Some of them will go into professions, but not all of them will go into the professions. The economy have changed, but we haven't really changed. And so we have to go back and think about what we might need to do and what kind of education we're going to provide. Now, I said that we have been sclerotic in Australia because we tend to be jammed in offering bachelor's degrees. It's the most expensive form of higher education that humans have ever invented. We charge excellent researchers to take a little bit of their time to give over to teaching undergraduate students. Around the rest of the world, there has been tremendous innovation, and it sits at the interface between the bachelor's degree and TAFE on the one hand, and the bachelor's degree and the secondary schools on the other hand. Because it turns out that not everyone wants or needs to spend 3 years full-time in university. It's all right for a 17-year-old, although modern 17-year-olds are always balancing education with social life, with work responsibilities in a way that we didn't. What does it mean for a 35-year-old who's just lost their job because they've fallen behind technically, who can't get another job unless they upgrade their skills but has just had a family? Are they really going to come back to university for 3 years to study, to get themselves back into the workforce? No. We're going to have to find ways to do things differently. Instead of having a curriculum which is set up to meet the demands of a discipline, you want to be a physicist, so you study physics, or set up to yield to the demands of the professions, you want to be a doctor, so you'll do this. We have to start looking at our curriculum so that it matches the needs of students on the one hand, industry on the other hand, and society more generally on the third hand. Part of the solution, we think, will be structural. Instead of insisting that everyone's got to spend 3 years and get a degree, we're going to have to unpackage our education. We're going to offer it in small bites, small units that can be taken in isolation if you need to upgrade your skills. You lose your job, you need to know Java. Why don't we teach you how to use Java and not teach you how to be a professional computer programmer? Those small units, though, have to be configured in a way that the students can, if they wish, assembly them into a degree. That can work for school leavers. That can also be repositioned for lifetime learners. Some of it's called micro-credentials. They're very short degrees. But we talk to industry and we know that there's a need for 1-year programs, 6-month programs, 2-year programs. Talk to the wine industry about what's really going to change it. It's big data, it's sensors, and it's drones. Yet there are no courses which match the impact of technology with the future of the wine industry. We have arguably the best wine research and teaching organisation in the world here in South Australia, and we're not offering packages of that kind. We need to get into that. Finding clever pathways so that those who have been disadvantaged can find their way into education in the first place. Find their way into university and explore what it is they're good at. And then connect that broad range of entry points with the traditional high-value exit points that we've found. Exit points that are in the professions, exit points that lead to good jobs. Let's take an example. We've got a brand new $4 billion investment down there in the Adelaide Biomedical City. If you go down there and walk around, you will see 4 fortresses built on that site. There's a University of South Australia building, it teaches allied health. There's a University of Adelaide building, it teaches medicine. There's SAMRI, which does research, and there's the Royal Adelaide Hospital, which treats patients. As best I can make out, they don't talk very much across those buildings, and they perhaps fight. They certainly all have their own coffee shops, so they don't come together in any social way. But what you can't do in South Australia is come in from Port Lincoln to study physiotherapy because you understand it, find out that you're really bloody good at it, and go on to become a doctor, because we can't connect those courses because they're not currently linked. This business of articulation of a broad range of entry points with excellent exit points has to be part of the world that we create so that students can select their education in the interests of their own future. So that's one of the parts of our thinking about where we have to head. And we have challenged ourselves now to go back to the basics and undertake a process that we're calling a curriculum review. We're starting from scratch and we're asking what we think students need. We reckon we'll probably keep 60 or 70% of what we've got, but we reckon there'll be some pretty profound change that goes around it. The process is being led by our Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic, Pascal Cuesta. Many of you will know it. It's institution-wide, it's community-wide, and we intend for it to profoundly reshape the kind of education that we offer. We've started the consultation. We've talked to a lot of people. We're trying to get at the underlying philosophy of what we're doing, which will go out shortly in a paper for broader consultation, and ultimately, if the merger doesn't go ahead, be embedded in a new strategic plan that will come through in about February next year. We've talked a lot to industry, and they've been active participants. We want to talk to you. And for what it's worth, we issued 300 invitations for people to come in and help us with it. We got 3 positive responses. That tells me that we have a great deal more work to do to find out how we find that interface with you and with the schools, because we have to get that conversation going well. There will be other ways of having input. So that is one of the differences that we think we need to make. But the other differences come to other parts of the curriculum. I talked about my worry that we're captive to the discipline. Physicists describe what you're going to be if you're a physicist. Dentist describes if you're going to be a dentist. Yet what we think we need are students who are more rounded, more flexible, and more responsive. And you will, I'm sure, be thinking along the same lines. I always think I've been a bit lucky to be a biochemist, because the last 20 years has just seen an explosion of information in biochemistry and molecular biology. Knowledge doubles in my discipline about every 18 months. And what you realise from that is there is just no point teaching the kids facts. Any fact you give them in second year is already out of date before they've graduated from the university. They're never going to get to use it. What you've got to teach them is how to think, how to use information, and how to be a better person. But what does that mean for us when we're so accustomed to teaching content? Well, we know we need more breadth. We know we need problem solving and creativity, communication, adaptability, collaboration, team skills. You guys all teach that, but we don't, not consciously, yet we could. We know that we'll need more than that too. I'd like to see more ethics in our courses as a general statement. I'd like to see a lot more of our students studying languages, because I think they're going to be a lot more employable if they know a language as well as whatever it is they're doing. I was sitting at a table here and we were talking about machine learning. We're good at it. We're wondering, are we already at the point where every single person that comes to university should at least be exposed to data science and machine learning, because it's almost certainly going to shape their futures as it is applied to whatever their job happens to be. We don't know how. They don't have to be machine learning experts, but they may need to know how it can shape their future and their industry. We need to empower students to be able to select a broad range of skills, not a narrow range of skills, that can create the broadest possible future for them. And this is interesting for us and will be challenging, because we're going to have to create space to breathe in a curriculum which has always been about doing. We've asked ourselves the question, should 100% of our students be doing some kind of work-integrated learning during their degree for credit as part of their degree? And I won't be at all surprised if the answer turns out to be yes, because that might just be more use to them than more facts, but on a base of facts that they already have. So on the one hand, we're going to tackle the structure of our degrees. On another, we're going to tackle the breadth of our degrees, and in particular the breadth outside the curriculum established by disciplines and professions. But we also need to look more closely at this interface with schools. I talk a lot to school teachers, I talk a lot to principals, and one of the things we bemoan is the tyranny of the ATAR in this state. The number of kids who we know are taking the wrong subjects in the context of their own lives because they want to get a higher ATAR. I think they think that it matters to someone in New York when they apply for a job 25 years later that the first question they'll be asked is, so what did you get for the South Australian ATAR? And of course, it's not a very relevant statistic. What matters is that they are properly prepared. Now, some of you will have seen in the newspaper that we are going to undertake a pilot with a number of the schools that are in this room today. We want to try to find a way to change the entrance into the university so that people are less worried about ATAR and more worried about what they should be studying. We've got a particular focus on mathematics because not enough students, from our perspective, are doing enough higher mathematics in matriculation. Not enough students to study engineering, not enough students to study physics, not enough students to study economics. But it's not just mathematics. We need more students studying languages as well in the schools and various other things as well. So you've probably seen that what we're proposing to do, and will be doing as of late this year, is offering, we think for the first time in South Australia, ATAR independent admission into our Bachelor of Engineering honours degree. That we will use people who've performed well in Year 11 and who are predicted to do well in Year 12, who have been interviewed by the university to check that everything is as it ought to be. We will make them conditional offers into the University of Adelaide to guarantee them a place, provided they do the right subjects and provided they achieve at a reasonable level. We hope that the security of knowing that they've already secured a university place will encourage them to choose the subjects that they need to do rather than the subjects that they think will get them a higher ATAR. This year is a trial. We'll be monitoring that trial. If it works, then we hope to broaden it. We hope to broaden it to the South Australian system in general, and we hope to broaden it beyond the Bachelor of Engineering to many other subjects, many other courses in the university. And for what it's worth, it's the way that the really great universities have always admitted students. Oxford doesn't have an ATAR, Harvard doesn't have an ATAR, Cambridge doesn't have an ATAR. They admit conditionally 1 year before the end of school on the basis of predicted marks. The last point I want to make is that we have one other thing that we're considering. We know that a really good university education is a passport for young people to the global world of work. That if you want a job in New York or Beijing or Berlin, the best thing you can have in your hand is a degree from an internationally known university because that provides employers with the confidence that you have the skills that they need. There is a global arms race in universities at the moment for rankings, for prestige, for reputation. And it plays out this way. If you talk to Simon Marginson, who's the guru on international rankings, he will tell you that the really serious universities in the world rank in the top 300. South Australia has one of those. There's another group of more elite universities that rank in the top 100 in the world. They have the opportunity for special partnerships with certain other universities, for partnerships with certain other countries that will only partner with universities in the top 100. South Australia is the only mainland state that does not have a university ranked in the top 100. South Australian kids arguably don't have the same opportunities that they do in the eastern states in particular, where they can go to one of these elite universities and have the global advantages that go with that. Now, it's not easy to get in the top 100. We're at about 135 at the moment, and that's a long way from the top 100. But we think South Australia may well need a university of this clout if we're going to attract the best scholars here, if we're going to attract the world's biggest companies to this place, and if we're going to educate our kids to the standard and with the advantages that the great communities around the world will have. I think the great communities for the next 50 years will have great universities at their heart. And that is part of the thinking behind the conversation that we're having with the University of South Australia. Individually, we don't rank as highly as that. Brought together, we believe we'll go very quickly into the top 100 and can have aspirations for being in the top 70 or so in the world. In fact, last night we sat down to discuss where we thought we might be in 10 years' time, and top 70 in the world is one of those possibilities. I'm going to stop there because really what I've tried to do, without any expertise at all, is to look forward into the future and to try and explain to you why we're going to make some real changes at the University of Adelaide to try to help people to grasp their own future. We're going to increase access to the store of knowledge that sits within the university. It won't be just 17-year-olds anymore, it will be everyone. We're going to try and find the way that we present that information to be more relevant to people's own lives. We're going to try to find the right ways of preparing the students for what we offer by working much more closely with you. And we're going to try and find the right way to position our students and our state on the global stage for maximum benefit. We don't know what the future will hold, but brilliant young people, clever innovation, and global connectivity surely sits at the heart of what we can do, and it's what unites us in this room. Thank you.